Welcome back to A Little Faith. I am Levi, and I am here with Sister Bette Winfree. How are you doing, Betty?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us today. We set up this conversation because the Rise Up and Build program, which is kind of the WCF program that tries to encourage ecclesias, existing ecclesias, and share kind of best practices to help our ecclesias grow and stay healthy. The Rise Up and Build program has a quarterly initiative coming up, which is talking about encouraging our members to host Bible classes at work or school. So we're going to talk about that because your name came up as someone who has some experience in doing that, and we're going to talk about that. So let's start with who you are. So where do you live now?
I live in Fairfax, Virginia, where I've lived for some time. And I go to the Arlington Ecclesia, which I've attended for some time also.
Nice. Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know or maybe isn't from this country, Arlington is kind of right outside of Washington, D.C. So it's the Northern Virginia, D.C. area. So where do you work now?
Well, I work at Fairfax County, where I have for some time. And I still work there part-time.
What work do you do for the county?
I have worked in IT, and I guess I'm still really in IT, but I'm more of a coordinator between a user department and the IT group. So we're sort of on the fence, working both sides.
That's interesting.
So, yeah.
How long have you been doing IT for the county?
I have probably been doing it about 45 years. So.
Oh, wow.
One or the other, yeah.
So you've seen a lot
when I was a kid.
When you were a kid, sorry?
I started off as a kid.
Oh, yeah. Well, you've seen a lot of technological advances then.
Quite a bit. Quite a bit of change, yeah. Yeah, I started off when I was 21.
What drew you to computers?
It went like this. I was in high school, and I'd spent a lot of time doing homework in the classes that I was in. And I just kind of came to the conclusion that if I went to a 4-year school, I'd really have trouble keeping my priorities right. And I'm not saying that I did end up doing that, but so somebody in my class who was, to be honest, is a little bit poor, she had signed up to go to Northern Virginia Community College, was going to take computer programming. I thought, well, it's not retail. Mm-hmm. It's not the medical field, which would have been all right, but it sounds like something where you need to do some thinking. So I really kind of went into it a bit cold, to be perfectly honest. And back then, it was probably a pretty limited segment of the population that had much of an idea about it.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know exactly how old you are, but getting into computers, 40, 50 years ago would be a very different world than computers now. How long has it been that you've been working for the county?
All right, let me do the math. I've been working for the county actually 51 years.
Oh, wow.
I think that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was an estimate. So, yeah.
So we're talking today about, I guess, hosting Bible classes at work. When did you first start doing that?
I think I was just 21, maybe close to 22 years old.
Oh, wow. And
we worked in a bullpen area back then. Uh-huh. You didn't have all these private offices. And I always felt like, and I had talked to some of my friends at high school about the things of the truth, about the Bible. And it just happened at work that I overheard two of the ladies there talking about some biblical question. And I asked them if they'd be interested in meeting together to talk about the Bible. So, or the particular question that they were working on at the time.
Do you remember when you met? Like what time during the week or whatever? Like how did it first start?
We met at lunch hour
Mm-hmm.
consistently. For the main class, it probably varied according to the time period, but there were weeks when we met, I think Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and sometimes Friday too. There are a couple people that I would meet with when they got more interested with, either early in the morning over breakfast, or one or two people came here and we talked in the evening. So it kind of varied.
Yeah. Yeah. And we were talking before we started recording, and you're meeting with another individual now outside of work. You said that person's retired.
Right.
Have you been meeting with people basically off and on over the 50 years?
Basically, but it got to be, I would call it, somewhat of a drier spell. But thankfully, there, at least recently anyway, for the past 4 or 5 years, has been somebody to meet with. We might have had a break for a time.
Yeah.
When people retired and moved on, but
that's it. Yeah, it's interesting. So, and you told the story about kind of your first class.
Mhm.
How would others come to join you? Do you have other stories like that?
Oh, that was the first one. Another thing we did for a time was to put up a note on the bulletin board when that went under the wire. Okay,
Right.
After a time, we couldn't do that, so we did it that way. It kind of happened by word of mouth. People know, as you know, they hear that you're interested in those kinds of things. So if they happen to have an interest, that's what happened with at least one person, a couple people. They asked if they could join. And then one person came on a dare.
Huh. So, are there any? Did anyone ever get baptized? I guess that you could. I wouldn't ask you to remember everyone you ever met with, but
I never counted before, but when I did an initial conversation with somebody else, it kind of 10 people got baptized out of the class.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
So, and then more importantly is the ones that it dominoed to. The more that it dominoed to. So and so talked to so and so who talked to so and so. That's something you don't really think of up front.
No, yeah, definitely not. What are some of the names of people that came through that?
Well, there was a Janice Ryan, Rich Sorrell, Carolyn Jenkins. Those three have actually passed away. Sharon Hill Wilson, who also passed away. Lorraine Yake, Darlene Herndon, Lynn Quitmeyer Malo, Mel Wells. I'm forgetting somebody. That's terrible. But
yeah.
Those are some of the names. Yeah.
I knew it was a dangerous question to ask.
Yeah, it is.
We obviously don't want to offend anybody.
Don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. I mean, like you said, considering the knock-on effects, especially Sister Sharon, she was had effect on a lot of people. Yeah, it's an interesting. I mean, I guess we're telling the story to kind of inspire others to kind of make these same decisions. And I think there's a lot of ways to go from here, because let's go here first. Like you said, it's definitely gotten harder at work to be. I mean, because of culture and changes, really legal changes made in the workplace. Like you're saying, I don't think anybody would be able to post on their bulletin board that they'd like to meet with a Bible class, but it's also, there's nothing wrong with people having lunch together and talking about whatever they want to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've
always been in a funny spot because I've worked at the same company for 13 years, and which is United Agencies Insurance, and it was actually founded by Christadelphian brother Bob Lloyd, and we have 40 employees total, but a lot of the people in the leadership positions are Christadelphians.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been now there's only 7 Christadelphians out of the 40 people, but I'm in a position where I've never been able to even, to be public at all. Even if I was to ask someone to join a Bible class, it might be called discriminatory or favoritism or whatever. So my workspace particularly is tough, but I mean, anyone has the opportunity. And I think another thought is, you're even there in your first story, you overheard someone talking about it and entered that conversation that way. That's that would feel more natural than kind of posting a poster and saying, come and talk with me about the Bible or something.
I had one person too that called me. In fact, she's the one I'm talking to now, and I don't know where we'll go, but she called me one day, and we had not really talked, but she knew I was religious. So she said, "Betty, will you pray for me?" She said, "I've got this court trial coming up. It's a murder." And she said, "I just can't stand the thought of listening to what I'd have to listen to in a murder trial." I said, "Sure, I'd be glad to do that." And then I followed up and said, "What would you think about the two of us getting together and maybe studying the book of Esther?" "Thank you so much for inviting me," which was
Neat.
just really nice to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
But not necessarily typical.
No. Yeah, I'm trying to think if people would be afraid to ask people to meet with them. What's something is there anything you would want to say to someone who would say to you, like, "Oh, I'd be too nervous to ever ask about doing the Bible readings together," or something?
Let's say you pray about it. Yes, you may be nervous, but in time you'll get comfortable and be really glad you did.
That's a good answer. Also, like you said, your coworkers knew you were religious, right? So
Somehow,
yeah, but we need to be sure that we're living in a way at work that makes that obvious, right?
Right.
What we already talk about, or what we do, or what we don't do.
And I'll be honest, when I was 21, I felt like so much of it depended on me. And did I really prepare? And I think that's important. It is important. But as time went along, it just became so obvious to me that God had done so much work in these people's lives before they came there.
Right.
I think you're just a little step along the way.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, it is important to be clear and to be kind, and at the appropriate time, tell it like it is. But we're only a little part of it, and God works so much, I think, in people's lives. So
yeah, that is so true. We can get confused, and I think maybe human pride or even pressure can enter in, like it's somehow our responsibility to save people, right? And it's not. That's all God's work. It's just our responsibility to, like you said, be kind to people, be open, be ready. I guess. We also were talking before. There's been a couple other. Your story is an amazing example, and thinking about all the people that are still members at Arlington and other ecclesias that relate back to, through some string or some knock-on domino effect to you holding classes at work. There's a couple other stories you and I were sharing about the Minneapolis St. Paul ecclesia. Also traces back to Brother John Peake, who was working at 3M and held classes through the 60s, and many people were baptized. I asked Brother Horst Trustedt for some names, and he shared Dave and Ann Swan, Arden and Celine Larson, Roger and Carol Lang, Jeff and Isabel Nicholson. There's others. I asked him to follow up on some other families, and he actually hasn't answered yet. So I know there are others. And another story, also in the 60s, which is coincidental, in the San Francisco area, there were 2 brothers who were brothers in the flesh as well, Ted and Bob Sleeper. and they both held classes at their universities. Ted at UC Davis and Bob at Berkeley University, or Cal, as it's called. And some names from both of those classes was Brother John Warner, Art Kirsch, the Amendolia family, David Levin, Brother John Laban, Brother Marco Dondero, and there's many more. Again, these are just kind of the names that Brother Randy Tyra is who sent me those names, and he's also on that list, and those are the names he sent back to me this morning. So it's interesting that, again, like you're saying too, some of those people have gone on to have large families in our church. Many generations of believers, which is amazing. That from that one ask or that one time together, many people were given a chance at salvation. So yeah, it's something that I wonder, how do we encourage more of that? How do we encourage more of brothers and sisters? I think Jessica's dad, my wife, Jess, her father is Phil Sweeney. He would host classes at his work for many years, and he would just ask for Bible readings. That's what he would say. He wouldn't call it a class per se, right? He would just say specifically, do you want to do the Bible readings with me at lunch? Which is I think that's a good low pressure way to ask.
Yeah, we typically, a lot of times we started by studying Genesis, and it would veer off into other things later on, but can seem like pretty neutral ground to start with.
Right.
Just kind of get people's feet wet.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And that is the beginning. Yeah. And it kind of does start answering the question of how did we get here? Where is this all from?
And actually, I didn't mention this to you up front, I don't think, but I heard about John Peake's class, and that actually, just hearing about it, encouraged me to think about it myself. So,
yeah, interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it wasn't like you're the first one to ever have the idea, I guess. But
it's like this can happen.
Yeah, it can work.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are other examples too. I mean, in North America that I just don't know about. I knew about those two because that's essentially full ecclesias. Like the St. Paul ecclesia still exists today, and there's two ecclesias in San Francisco that both have members that are from those classes that still exist today. Which is amazing. That's the 60s is 60 years ago. That's a long time ago. We need to be people that people know as religious, without turning people off, so you can't, it's not, you don't want to stand on a soapbox in the middle of all the cubicles, but we do need to be a person that people know as religious. And I think the way I've always done that is I ask people what they did on the weekend, and they say, I did this or that. And then I say, well, I did this, and then I went to church on Sunday, and I'll share some detail about church. And right now I say that my 4-year-old loves her Sunday school teacher, which is true. We're very blessed by the sister who's leading her Sunday school class. And Pippa looks forward to Sunday school so much right now, which is wonderful. That's a huge blessing. But so I share that with my coworkers and with my clients as well. So I do a lot of face-to-face meetings with clients, and I'll tell them, what I did on the weekend, and that my 4-year-old loves Sunday school. And I think it's a very safe way for me to signal, that I'm a religious person, I guess. So yeah, I would encourage anyone to do things like that. Don't be afraid to bring that up, because especially, with the times we're in, I think that lots of people are wondering, what's happening, what's going to happen.
Yeah, and at a minimum, you can say there's a better day coming.
Right.
I don't think it's going to be good in front of it, but there's a better day coming.
Yeah.
So some people want to pursue that. Other people's will just say, I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they'll say when the other guy gets elected, there's a better day coming. Yeah.
You were mentioning like at St. Paul and maybe out where you live, it's been families. In our case, it might be only one individual from a family, which is tough.
Mhm.
But like, okay, like there was a mom had a son that came to a Sunday school after she started coming. He taught one friend. That friend taught another friend.
Mhm.
That friend taught his wife. And so while it's not, all from a couple of families, there's still that, just that domino effect that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, and even in our own cases, I don't know um, yours necessarily, but for us, it was somebody introduced them. It was with my grandmother. It was somebody they moved next door to in Richmond.
Uh-huh.
With my grandfather, was somebody way back up further up the line that knew, Brother Thomas. With my mom's family, it was her aunt by marriage,
Mhm.
the uncle.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, our story. Well, I don't know the story of how my family on my mom's side originally found Christadelphians, but the story on my dad's side is an amazing story. So it is back in the it's in the 1880s. So Brother Thomas and Brother Roberts are still active. I guess Brother Thomas has recently passed at that point, and in Montreal, Canada. And my great great grandfather, my grandfather's grandfather. So that's great my
Right.
my Calvin Gilino's grandfather was working at a shoe factory. He was not religious, but he was a gambler.
Ooh.
So he had a gambling problem, and he would get his paycheck, and he would gamble it away. And he came in and it was December, and he came in and whatever, was working the next week, and he actually was crying at his desk, crying where he was working. And the manager comes by, who was a Christadelphian, and says, "What are you crying about?" And he said, "Well, I couldn't stop gambling again. I lost the money, and I won't be able to buy the kids Christmas presents this year." And the manager said, "Okay, if you can find Christmas in the Bible, I'll give you $1, which is a lot back then. I'll get $1, which is enough to buy the Christmas presents. If you can find the word Christmas in the Bible, I'll give you $1."
Huh.
And so he went home, and he said, because he played him, he said that because he knew he was a gambler. And if you can't find it, you give me $1. He said, "I'll take it. Christmas has to be in the Bible." So my great great grandfather went home, and he spent all night, didn't sleep, looking for the word Christmas in the Bible. Obviously, there's no internet. There's no Strong's concordance. Right. You can't find it. He doesn't find it. He says, "You swindled me." He came back, "You swindled me. I can't believe it." Fell for it again. Christmas isn't in the Bible. And he said, "I know that. I knew it wasn't in the Bible, but I'll make you a deal. You don't owe me $1, but if you do your Bible readings with me from now until Christmas every day," because I guess now I'm realizing, telling this story, it's actually similar to holding a class at work. A little bit of a different start. Do the Bible readings with me every day, and I'll give you $1 for the Christmas presents at Christmas time. And he said, "Okay." And then they never stopped. They did the Bible readings for years after that.
That's great.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I never thought about it now until having this conversation. That's probably the Gelino family all came from a class at work too.
No.
So yeah, it's a fun one. Well, thank you so much for your time. I think hopefully it inspires someone to ask someone to do the Bible readings at work.
Yeah, I mean, we have a treasure. I think some ways we know what a treasure we have, in other ways we're shy about it.
Yeah. No, yeah. So yeah, that's a good thought to end on. So thank you, Betty.
Okay. Thank you, Levi.